And we are here once again, ladies and gentlemen, for the first time ever. You have got Russ and the Blockhead. A little bit of a different format. And as we start this off, guys, those of you that might be sports fans and might be interested in Pardon the Interruption, well, pardon two guys who are MMA fans that are just interested in what's going on today in the world of MMA. So I guess they have Ariel and the bad guy. You got Russ and the Blockhead. So, Russ, what's going on, man?
Well, just a Monday after a busy fight weekend.
This is true. You watched the fights with a lot of guys in your living room. How did that go?
Man, we had a blast. We did a little bit of craft beer tasting.
Yes.
And then we did kind of a watch along and watching the fight night, UFC fight night this past weekend. And it went pretty well. I did it live on Facebook, and I think may do it again. Probably want to get a better setup, but had good feedback from it. So, hey, that's all that matters, right?
There you go. I mean, tonight you are my aide de camp when it comes to putting this thing together. But again, when it comes to the setup you had there, the beer tasting was interesting, but definitely the crossover between who was talking football, who's talking MMA was a little bit hard to follow. So there's a little bit of sporadic in there, but that's how Loud and Opinionated Nation works, right? So I think it'll work just fine.
Yeah, we had 4 guys this time. Probably, if I ever do something like that again, I may just keep it down to 2, or 3. Me, and then two of my other buddies, because it was fun. One of the guys that was there, I may do something regular. I can't even say that word right now. Regularly, heck, what the heck? On a regular basis. There we go.
You'll have that Bermuda Triangle you'll continue to work with.
They're one of the guys on a regular basis. I may do something craft beer related to where we just kind of go grab 4 different beers and then sit around, chit chat, maybe talk a little sports and taste about 4 beers and make a show out of it.
I like the sound of that. I like where that's going. Speaking of talking about sports, why don't we get into how this is going to work tonight? So what the plan is, if you're part of the Blockhead Nation, Loud and Opinion Nation, and Ray JG, we're giving you a shout out. But Ray JG couldn't join us tonight, but in the future, he'll be joining us down the road for a Bermuda Triangle of our own. The way this is going to work is, if you've ever watched Pardon the Interruption, or if you maybe are an MMA fan and have watched Ariel and the Bad Guy, there are questions that are thrown out, and then you're given a time limit to give your thoughts on it. So we're going to give this a shot. As far as MMA goes, there's so many moving parts that are in MMA. So just to have a little fun, what do you say that we go ahead and get into out of the 5 rounds? Let's jump into round 1, shall we, Russ?
Let's do it.
All right. So round 1, we're taking a look at the flyweight division. Now, some people I've talked to are not thrilled with it, and I understand that there's not a lot of star power coming out of this division. But we just had an incredible round, really, between Davison Figueiredo, who's the new current flyweight champion of the world, against one of the old guard, Joseph Benavidez. And so my question I have to ask is this. It was mentioned in a lot of MMA news that it's possible that Cody No Love Garbrandt might be going down to 125. So my question for you, Russ, is take it where you want for the flyweight division. Do you think that there's enough star power or enough guys that can hold the division together to keep flyweights going? Or are they going to be solely dependent upon Cody Garbrandt to come in and really bring some flavor to this division?
Star power? Absolutely not. If you look at the rankings in the flyweight division, they are guys that, I'll be honest, I've only heard of the top 2, Joseph Benavidez and Davison Figueroa. To bring Cody in, no. I don't think you should bring Cody in because Cody just had a really superb knockout in his last fight, and to make him cut weight just to put some star power in that division, no, build a star. I mean, honestly, to me, the UFC has always been about building stars. You don't have if you're not building a star, you'll never get guys like Anderson Silva. You'll never get guys like Conor McGregor, who started out without a single tattoo on his body. and now look at him, he's covered. But you know, you look at the rankings, and for one, I'll give them this: the top 5 are names that I can say.
You heard it here, Loud and Opinionated Nation. I'm not cutting you off. You still have about 3.5 minutes to go, bud. If you want them, take them.
I think, you know, if build somebody. Looking at the flyweight division right now, you've got a guy that's ranked number 3, Brandon Moreno. He's 16-5-1. He has a really clever nickname called the Assassin Baby. But you know, build somebody. Don't, you know, let Cody stick in his division. Let him, you know, give Cody somebody to fight in the bantamweight division, and then give him a chance to maybe fight for the title. I mean, let's be honest. That fight with Davison Figueroa and Joseph Benavidez, well, that round was an excellent round. But I think, to me, you should build. Build on the division. You know, Triple C retired. Thank God he retired.
Knew that was coming.
But I just can't stand that dude. I just can't stand him. You know, and I'm glad he did, because look what he did. Look
you can steal 2 minutes just on your opinions about Triple C.
But look what him retiring did for that division. It gave us Peter Yan as a champion, and now we have Davison Figueroa as a champion. Okay, that's 2 guys that you didn't really know. I'd only seen 2 of Peter Yan's fights. That's the first fight I had ever seen of Davison Figueroa. So, you know, give me more of a build. Don't just tell somebody, hey, I want you to cut 10 pounds or 15 pounds and come fight the champion over here. No, let that guy sit in a weight that he is comfortable, and let him fight in his division, and maybe give him an opportunity to fight for a title in his division.
I have to give it to you there. I'm going to go ahead and just stop you, just because, I mean, we could have eaten up another minute if you wanted to. I'm going to go and reset and just give myself 5 minutes, because I'm not sure where I'm going here. But when it comes to the flyweight division, really, when you look at the actual horsemen of them, you lost one of them right off the bat, which was Demetrius Johnson. When you had him going over to one championship, you're losing the very best of your cream of the crop in the flyweight division. Don't care who you are. And the second thing was when you lose Triple C, who decided to retire at the top of his game. I'll give you that. But the only guy that was able to truly beat Triple C in when it comes to the flyweight division was the only workhorse that is still there, and that is Joseph Benavidez. So I just want people to realize that maybe there's not some star power behind Joseph Benavidez, but there's definitely the work ethic to build on the flyweights. But now that we can officially know that Davison Figueroa is definitely the guy, because we had that controversy at first, or it was definitely you're questioning. This definitely needs to be run back. When you have a guy who has the headbutt and you've got the blood coming down that can easily get in your eye, and of course he still dropped his hands and dropped him, but you can say either way. Was that due to sloppiness? Was it either way? There was a build-up to that story, but now that you've seen that, I was just yelling at the screen to Benavidez, just survive this round. I know you're going to lose the title. I know you're not the guy. Figueroa is easily the better guy than you tonight, but I'm like, can you hang on? I love the fact that it had to be stopped by the ref, because he would not give him the satisfaction in that fight. He would not tap. The ref had to step in. Okay, that's it. So, yeah, when it comes to Cody Garbrandt, I just feel when it comes to that cutting that kind of weight, the last guy that did that was TJ Dillashaw. And do I need to go into the dark sides of what happened with that weight cut for TJ? I don't think I really do. Anybody doesn't know the story, substance, we'll leave that where it is on the table. But to pull Cody Garbrandt into 125, I don't believe that he's the saving grace. I'm honestly with you. We both agree that no, there's not a lot of superpower in there. You do have I'm sorry, bud. What's up?
Sorry, keep going. I got a knock on my door.
Oh no, of course. No, definitely.
I didn't know that somebody was coming.
No, that's fine. So that's fair enough. Anyway, that's how the show works, guys. But again, when it comes to Figueroa and Benavidez, you had one solid round where I'm just going, please finish this. But of course, it comes to the last 12 minutes. Figueroa's your number one guy. But to continue with the flyweight division, my answer is simply the same that you said. We don't need Cody Garbrandt. I don't like the idea of Cody Garbrandt coming down to the flyweights. I don't like the idea of the division going away either. It simply just comes down to you do need a guy to build. And you're right. It could be somebody like this assassin baby that we're talking about. I'm all for that, but there have been so many eyes that are not in the flyweight division. It's unfortunate, but I understand because there's so many killers in the other divisions at this point. So to answer that, do they need Cody Garbrandt? No. Do they need to build the flyweight division on a star? Yes, they do. They lost Demetrius Johnson. That was a huge blow to the division. You lost Henry Cejudo, who, again, like him or not, you at least had people talking about him. I'll give you that. I don't care for the guy either. I understand that. I thought he was the king of cringe, and I think that started with Chael Sonnen hurting his feelings because about words matter. They called it the Henry Cejudo complex when you can't get over your own dadgum way. But, it's the Olympic medals for him just wasn't enough. But then he tried this gimmick. I go, that's what you concocted in your mind. But still, to wrap it up in the flyweight division, I think we're on the same level on this one. I guess I'll go ahead and give it the ship bell since we are officially done. That's the end of the round. Moving on to the next. Hey, it won't be a perfect video, but we're having some fun here tonight. Now, let's have a little bit of fun with this one, Russell. What do we do now at this point with the middleweight division? We're leaving flyweights, going to middleweights because you've got Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa. We can only speculate that one at the end. But with the rest of this, what do you do with all these guys? Let's look at the rankings. What matchups do we make out of the killers that are in the middleweight division? You have the floor, sir.
The middleweight division, to me, is probably your most gifted division. You look at, you look at the top 10. Your top 10 guys are guys that have all been they've all been up there for an opportunity. They've all been close to an opportunity. Well, not Jack Hermansen, but Derek Brunson has a fight coming up. I think this weekend. You just had Till and Whitaker. You've got Paulo Costa and Israel Adesanya coming up. So the middleweight division is pretty heavy with contenders. I've even saw things where they said, who do you want Robert Whitaker to fight next? Do you want to see him fight the winner of Stylebender and Paulo Costa, or do you want to see him fight Jack Hermansen, or do you want to see Darren Till fight Jack Hermansen? So the middleweight division to me is probably the best one out there for putting out solid fights and contenders. Even your lower guys, you've got guys like Brad Tavares on there, Uriah Hall. So you've got names in the middleweight rankings. It's just, finding where to put those guys and who to put those guys against. Me personally, I wouldn't be upset if they gave us Till and Yoel. I've also seen that one kicked around. Even though Yoel, but with Stylebender,
I love you, Mike. Never happened.
With Stylebender, it's just so hard to match his, to match him up with a good fight. I think if he makes it past Paulo Costa, I keep calling him Acosta. I've done that ever since I've seen him fight.
Either way, we know who the contender is.
Yeah, Paulo Costa.
Yeah.
But what I do like is give me Izzy and Whitaker again. Give me round 2 of that one. Because Robert Whitaker looked really good this last fight.
It was a very smart technical fight. They almost mirrored each other.
And I was a big Robert Whitaker fan, but it just seemed like every time that guy got on the top tier, he got injured and he was out. Yeah. And he would, I think if you look at his last 3 years in the UFC, he's fought 4 times, including this last fight. And that's all been because of injury.
Exactly.
And so it's a very disappointing thing for him, obviously, but especially for fans, because, do you want to see Israel Adesanya just rule over that middleweight division like Anderson Silva did?
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, yeah, but with Anderson Silva was beating people without taking it to the end. He was knocking people out. He was submitting people. Izzy's fights, a lot of them go to decision. He doesn't have a lot, to me, he doesn't have a lot of good, distinct victories to where you're like, yeah, he can be the next, Anderson Silva. No, his last fight with Robert Whittaker, it ended in TKO in the second, but that was 2019. His last fight against Yoel Romero, which was the weirdest fight I can remember seeing in a long time. He took it to decision. Is that a gift on Yoel, or is that a negative on Izzy? I don't know. Is that telling you that Izzy doesn't have knockout power, or is that saying that Yoel Romero has a chin? I don't know. Because, like I said, that was a weird fight. That was a strange fight. Yoel's faces and all his little quirky things that he was doing in that fight. I mean, it was one of those things. So give me Whittaker, Adesanya 2, if he gets past Paulo Costa, and then you go from there. Because you still got guys like Kelvin Gastelum that are still sitting back there. And like I said, the middleweight division is one that but it's always been stacked. Middle and welter for UFC has always been a stacked division of contenders that could potentially fight for a championship or could main event a pay-per-view.
I think you and I, just looking at time, I think you and I can concur here as I start my time, that when you say that the middleweight division is a mess, it's not said in a negative context. It's actually, what do you do with all of these guys here? And briefly, YFB even took it to the chalkboard just to see if he could pull off some things here. So we've got our champ, obviously, Adesanya. People have been asking about this guy Costa, who was number 2. If you just go by the rankings, you got this one going on. You got Whittaker, who, again, you're right. It was a smart technical fight. These two imitated each other. But just looking down at what's left on here, I don't want to leave out Conier on anything. But my thing is, if you're going to get the two, what I call the crazies of this division, if you want to get anything where you don't have to build anything, there's no title on the line, there's just, again, giving us something similar to the present that we got from Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker, then I believe that you'd have to give it to these two. I believe if you took the two crazies of this division, it wouldn't take long to build up the Joker versus the Gorilla. I honestly am with you on that one. This one, what do you do with Yoel Romero? It comes down to, if we did that, then it's an easy matchup here. But right, once again, I want Whittaker to take Adesanya, but again, it changes everything if he's going to be facing Costa. So in the argument between you and I here, there's not anything that's to argue. It's just, this is the one from a fan's perspective that I'm absolutely intrigued by the most. Welcome back to the division, Robert Whittaker. But Darren Till versus Jack Hermansen, I absolutely adore the idea of that fight. Go ahead, sir.
But there is a small rumor out there that Till may have blew out his ACL, and he may be out for over a year.
That changes everything. Let's go once again back to the drawing board. But yeah, since we have other guys who pull these in that do their 5 minutes on the set, I had to pull the same one. I guess that's just a fan of me that's begging for the two crazies that would be able to get a chance at this one. But once again, when we get to Israel Adesanya, do I want Israel versus Whittaker too? Absolutely, of course, no question whatsoever. And when it comes to no question whatsoever, getting into round 3. I don't want to be able to say I told you so, but we had a co-main event that not many people had great things to say about at the end of it. But I will say, as far as the first time that Shogun Rua versus Nog actually happened in Pride, that was a beautiful fight. That was an absolute classic. As far as the one in the UFC, when they put them up on the screen, they showed the best moments of those 5 rounds. I hate to break it to you, but not much else happened in between that. As far as this one goes, I told you I didn't care about it, but we got to talk about the concept of trilogy. It seems like a lot of people, even the experts, seem to be getting this one backwards. What do you look at, Russ, starting your 5 minutes, when you think of the concept of a trilogy in MMA? What should MMA fans be looking for? What should trilogy mean to, and think any fight if you want. What should trilogy mean to us MMA fans, even casual fans?
Classic rivalries.
Yes.
Classic hatred. Well, not necessarily hatred. Classic dislike for your opponent. You go back and you look at the history of trilogies for the UFC. When the first one that pops to my head is Matt Hughes GSP.
Sure.
That was a classic bit of trilogies right there. And then you can go down the list of, you had Rampage and Vanderlei.
Yes.
You had Forrest and Tito. You just had Shogun and Little Nog. That's Little Nog. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Shogun and Little Nog. I will say this. You have probably one that just popped on my screen here, Randy and Chuck.
That's true. That one definitely had to go to the third time.
We did not get Tito and Chuck like we wanted for the third time. That was garbage. But you look at what you have coming up August 15th, and that is a trilogy. That right there is something that, especially, myself, you, Rated JG, I'm huge Stipe fans.
Yes.
I saw Stipe knock out JDS at the American Airlines Center, and that was one of the best UFC fights I've ever seen. But I was also because I was there.
Right.
But you look at that trilogy that you have coming up. Cormier used his wrestling and just worked Stipe that first round. What did he do the second time? He tried to stand with him. And what happened to him when he tried to stand? Stipe wore him out. Body shot, body shot, body shot. Good night, Irene. Count it, and it's 1-1. Coming up now with August 15th, man, I don't know what to say about that one because the excitement is real, the hype videos are real. But getting back to trilogies, potential trilogies that we could see. You could see Conor and Nate 3. Yep. Do you want to see that? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Of course.
Do UFC fans want to see that? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Of course.
You could.
It's so easy to build that one too.
You could. Trying to think of the one trilogy that I just didn't care for, and that was Chuck and Tito. Do I think they're necessary? If it's 1-1, yes. But if it's 2-0, no. I don't need to see somebody who has been beaten 2 times try to fight to get one behind the guy. What are you gonna do? Fight 5 times? Best 3 out of 5? What? No. Especially with Shogun and Little Nog. That may have been Little Nog's last fight. We don't know. And with that fight though, Shogun looked good. Yeah. Shogun looked 10 times better than I expected him to look. Little Nog looked like Little Nog. He was out of shape. He was 44 freaking years old.
Yeah.
What do you expect when you have a 44-year-old man in there trying to make something?
Yeah, go ahead, man. I'm looking
at one trilogy right here. Fedor and Little Nog.
Yeah.
Fedor won all 3 of those.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they fight 3 times? It was not necessary. They fought 3 times in Pride in a span of probably 2 years. And it's like, why? Well, if Fedor has beat this guy 3 times in a row, why are y'all still giving him Fedor? Obviously, Fedor was in the prime of his career in 2004, people. I'm done.
It took you, I'm going to go ahead and start my time now because it took you to the 3-minute mark to finally say exactly what I wanted to hear. Because again, I don't think that you and I have disagreed on anything on our most tonight. And that just happens to be because of the topics that are at hand. But what you mentioned right there, when you build a trilogy, this is even just in the concept of wrestling. If you have two guys that are in a bracket and you have 1 for 1, one guy wins one match, another guy wins the other match, you go to what's called the rubber match. That's quite obvious in that concept. So when it comes to a trilogy, it seemed to me like you were saying the same thing that I am screaming at the top of my lungs. Explain to me how Shogun versus Nog was a trilogy. And you even brought up a great one, which was Rampage versus Vanderlei Silva, which went to 4, by the way. Did we need to go to Toy Story 4? People, did we? No. Do I understand that you want to bring in a new age of new fans to be able to watch Toy Story and to embrace the entire collection? I can understand where you're going with on this one, but when it comes to MMA, you always go to a rubber match, meaning even if you're a wrestling fan, best 2 out of 3. Best 2 out of 3 falls. This is a simple concept. And yes, if Fedor has beaten Nog twice, there's nothing else to prove. Daniel Cormier, I would consider John Jones to be his true kryptonite. I don't consider Stipe Miocic to be his kryptonite. Who brings out the worst in him? John Jones. There is no reason in the world ever to build up a John Jones versus Daniel Cormier 3. Even if you were to say, hey, let's move him to heavyweight, it doesn't work for the fans that actually follow the sport and have an understanding of history. You found out who the guy is that's best. Nonetheless, even though there might be some substances that have muddied up the water, when you come down to what the sport is, Stipe versus DC3 is a true trilogy. And you've even heard his wife mention how when DC won that fight and talked about how he was the greatest fighter, even though you got a man that's a man's man like Stipe going out and fighting real fights, who is hearing this, his wife is saying, don't think that for 1 second that Stipe didn't hear what you said, Daniel Cormier. Don't think for a second that his feelings weren't hurt. Don't think that he didn't want to come back and prove it. And he proved it the second time. So the buildup for this is perfect. It's so easy, like you said, on Conor versus Nate Diaz to build up to the 3rd time. You have a submission. You have the one that goes to 4. It could be so easy for Nate Diaz to pick up a mic and say, you didn't even really beat me the last time. You might have won, but you didn't knock me out. You didn't submit me. I put you to sleep the first time. How easy, 5 minutes it would take for a buildup. For Conor versus Nate Diaz 3, you don't even need it that long. So when it comes to this idea of trilogy, the trilogy should be best 2 out of 3. If you got a guy who's been beat twice, there's no more buildup except that you need a contract and you have your 3 a year you're supposed to give a guy. Well, okay, but why do you have to give him to the same one that has become, that thorn in your side? It comes down to you're an athlete. There's always somebody better. We have 2 very good podcasts here. We have a great combination, but there's somebody out there that's podcasting right now that is better than us. Either way, there's always going to be somebody better. And when it comes down to this idea of trilogy, it has just gotten under my skin that even the experts are saying, we got a trilogy tonight. No, you don't. If you have 1 for 1, you got a trilogy. If you got 2 victories, you don't have one. And I've ended my time there.
I gotta agree with you. But so, you did leave some vulgarities out when you were doing your impression of Nate Diaz.
Oh, believe me, it is very hard to clean up the vernacular that is Nate Diaz. That is not easy to do on my end, but that's very true. Anybody that follows him can figure it out quick. Just go back and watch him talking about him and Jorge Masvidal. That's probably one of the cleanest ones he ever had on the air. But
that would be one that I would pay to see.
Exactly. So for that one to be able to say, we'll run that back, that could easily become a trilogy if that were to happen. But once again, the one's going to get people into the building the fastest. And really another one we could even do if somehow they pulled it off by the miracle, by the grace of God, is maybe in Brock Lesnar versus Frank Mir 3. I mean, that's a far-fetched idea out there. That's out there in that's just fairy dust as we speak now.
I think Brock's grown a full man beard and he's living in his Canadian cabin hunting moose.
Somehow Loud and Opinionated and IFB got into his ear, and all of a sudden he comes out with that mallet and stretches his back and goes, I think I'm going to fight today.
Yeah.
Round 4, man. You kind of gave a precursor to it already, but again, for those that are not familiar, what should people be anticipating? Not even the trilogy. What should they be anticipating with the fight that we have talked up so much? Let's just get into it. What should people be anticipating for Stipe versus DC3? You have the floor, sir.
Absolutely anything.
Yes.
You did not expect Stipe to try to wrestle with DC in the first one. DC took him down, out-wrestled him, outmanned him, boom. Match 1, DC.
Mm-hmm.
Match 2, DC tries to stand with him. So he's trying to stand with him. What happens? Body shot. Boop, boop, boop. Pieced up. A-Town, you're down. So coming into this fight on August 15th, there is absolutely anything that is possible. I think we could see a fight that actually goes to like the championship rounds, and where you sit there and you say, okay, DC's going to try to shoot, and maybe Stipe's been working on his ground game. It's completely unexpected. I don't know what we're going to see for this fight card. I am just so happy that this is going to be less than 10 days away. No, sorry, less than 20 days away. For a match prediction, I'm going to just say Stipe in the later rounds, because that's what my fingers crossed is. I think Stipe, I don't know, because there's so much potential that can happen post this fight. It makes it even more exciting, because you have the opportunity to have 2 fights that you could potentially be amazing. Whether DC wins or Stipe wins, do you get Stipe Ngannou? Do you get DC Ngannou? Do you get, so I'm not trying to get off the topic here, but it is going to be one of those fights that you are just going to literally be on the end of your seat going, and just bug-eyed, staring at the screen, like watching an anticipated wrestling match. You kick out and do all that kind of stuff. You get all excited. It's going to be something that I hope that they keep it to 3. And if DC wins, does he retire? If Stipe wins, does he retire? Stipe will make himself, one of the best heavyweights of all times right there. Does he retire? Does he stay in there? So there's just so much potential for this fight that it makes it even more exciting I don't know, because you have heavyweights on this card too that are potential heavyweight contenders. The Black Beast is on this card. Alexei Olenek is on this card. So there's so much that can be done with this fight. There's so many directions that this fight can be taken. And it just makes it even more exciting because of the potential after the fight. And that's what makes this fight. And if you've seen the freaking hype videos for this, dude, I had the goosebumps. I was like, UFC went all out with this one. They spared no expense.
They did the promos right for this one. That build up.
Absolutely. So expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
Is what I'm going to go with. I mean, that's I'm still gonna pick my boy Stipe. But you couldn't have 2 of the nicest guys in the UFC as well.
There's another conflict, yeah.
I mean, just 2 of the nicest dudes in the UFC. DC being one of the top contributors to the commentating team.
Yes.
And so even if he does retire, he's got a career in that if he wants it. Stipe's a volunteer fireman. He's got that to fall back on. So, both these guys are just good, wholesome dudes who you want both of them to win some way, somehow.
I have to go with you on that one. And as I start my time, I may not make it to 5 minutes. I keep giving you the full 5. That's not a great host, I guess you could say. But all I can think of at this point when it comes to the actual fight itself, it's one word. It's magic. And I will say that when you want to think about what the anticipation is, you're absolutely right. When it comes to anticipating the what now is a huge discussion of what happens with this, because this buildup has been done right. You've gotten in whichever camp you decide, we actually, even though we're going to be on the Stipe train, we understand being on the Daniel Cormier train as well. I mean, whether you decide to be behind the guy who is a man's man who goes out and fights fires literally for a living and has won the title and is considered possibly the greatest to ever do it, or is still debatable at this point. You got a guy who runs a kids wrestling clinic. And again, the only kryptonite I give him is John Jones. It's the only time I've seen him truly be uncordial. But, when it comes to what, quote, offended Stipe, it's more of when there's just the sting of somebody who has knocked you off the top of the mountain. And I think that just comes down to he used that well. He reassessed everything well once he got inside, because that's how Jorge Masvidal just pulled off the whole thing. Not to get into a different discussion, but he mentioned how he wants another shot at the champion again. He's like, I know the formula now. Get me back in there. It's more like Stipe may not have said it, but he's like, I felt out this guy. I know where my mistakes are. Get me back in there. I trust my camp. I trust my coaches. He's very well rounded in that area. So it comes down to you have got the rubber match. You got the best 2 of 3. But then you get down to after this is over, then there is very much the what now to do with the heavyweight division. You do have some powerhouses that are out there. They just did an assessment of Curtis Blades on ESPN just doing a takedown. And they said that he had, about 1,800 PSI just taking you to the ground? That's the equivalent of Ivan Drago's one punch, buddy. And when he hits, he destroys. What Curtis Blades takes down, he destroys. But you're right. You've got a build-up between Derek Lewis and Olenek. You wonder if there's going to ever be a build-up once again of Rosenstrike. Don't count any of these guys out just yet. Curtis Blades being blown up from his last fight. Wrestling will definitely take it out of you. But do we have the toolboxes of all these heavyweights to really give something to the contenders? Of course we do. I keep saying that I don't want to see Stipe versus Ngannou too, but the more I think about it, I go, wait a minute. He's had time to be marinated. He's more developed now. Could we have a best 2 out of 3? We might not have a trilogy if Stipe ends up beating him again. DC versus Ngannou, it just works. You've already got my attention just by saying that. Even speculation, like we even mentioned before, what if somehow the fandom, the spectacle that is Brock Lesnar came in? I'd love to see him go in and get his head knocked out across the cage at this point. Take that long of a break for guys who have been in there doing it and doing the actual work, laying the groundwork for this era that we're in. So once again, you don't depend on one spot and one star. The whole sport continues, like we've mentioned, from the flyweights to the heavyweights. There is always a plethora of talent that you've got that you can see. And Stipe versus DC3 is the very best 2 that are going at it. And the now what? It's going to be who do we build up at this point? But, man, the heavyweight division is stacked, but it's one of those, do they have enough time in the spotlight? At this point, the ones who've had the most time in the spotlight are these 2. Now we have the commercial of Ngannou being in the Toyota Tires truck. A little bit of a look at Dominic Reyes and Anthony Pettis. Forrest Griffin still takes it home every time. But, I love seeing that that's getting out there. But at least you can expect the unexpected. You can expect magic in the making for this one. Sometimes in wrestling, they've done good guy versus bad guy. Sometimes they've taken the 2 most beloved characters, The Rock and Austin, and put them in and worked into one of the greatest venues of all time. Could Stipe versus DC be one of the best? It could have the workings for that, or certainly it can make its way into the top 10. But this is going to be a memorable Magic night for us fans. And on that, I give myself the bell here. Go ahead.
Heavyweight to look for. Heavyweight to look for, Tanner Boser.
That's right. Boser is definitely in the wings at this point. He hasn't really made himself an island of his own yet, but he's definitely got the potential at this point.
He's had 2 knockout wins in 12 days, something like that.
Something like that at this point. So looking very promising. So You know, you never know where they're going to come from. You know, you pay attention to this hand, you never know what the other hand's doing. But once again, following this sport is so fast paced. We've been spoiled because our sport just has not slowed down, and there's no real days off. I mean, there's days off on who's not fighting there, but the UFC just continues to put out the product, man. We are getting it in full all the time, and we shouldn't complain. But boy, we got nothing to complain about with the buildup of Stipe versus DC3, man.
No.
What we can complain about is another concept. I brought up trilogy with you, and we got our complaints out there. I'm going to bring up another one now. 5 minutes about the concept of retirement in MMA. You mentioned your dislike and distaste for Triple C, who wanted to leave at the pinnacle, but you've got other guys like Randy Couture, you got guys like Lyoto Machida, who continues to send people out the door, Vitor Belfort, other guys that have ridden off into the sunset or said they were. You got Gustafsson said that he's done with the sport. Well, welcome back, and he faces Verdun. So just on the concept of retirement in MMA, is it a solidified idea, or is it just dadgum confusing, or what are your thoughts on retirement in mixed martial arts?
To me, retirement should mean what it says, retirement.
Mm-hmm.
As many know, I am a wrestling fan. So I don't want to compare apples to oranges, but in one case, the great and always amazing 16-time world champion Ric Flair had a retirement match, and then after his retirement match, had about 35 other matches.
Just to clarify, are you talking about when he faced Shawn Michaels?
Correct.
Okay, because otherwise I'm like, man, which retirement are we talking about here? But that's the big.
Yeah. To tie that back into UFC, you have a guy like Gustafsson, who we just saw this weekend, come out, say he's retiring. And, for what we don't know how the retirement actually works behind the scenes and contractually.
Sure.
If you're on your last fight, I can understand that. Yes, it's the last fight of my contract. I'm going to retire here. I went out with a win, blah, blah, blah. For guys like, I just drew a blank. Gustafsson, sorry, I drew a blank on his name. Guys like Gustafsson, he went out with a loss, and then he wants to make a comeback to come up to heavyweight.
Yeah.
Doesn't make a good showing. Very kind of disappointing. I was really looking forward to that fight for him being in heavyweight. So now what does he do? Is he going to officially retire? Is he going to file the paperwork and be out the door, or are we going to have this, blah blah blah? What he's got? You have a guy like Triple C who retires and won't shut the hell up.
Yeah,
he wants to go on Twitter and call out Peter Yan. He wants to call out
Volkanovski.
Volkanovski. He wants to call out all these people, and you're like, dude, you said you were retiring on a high, and here you are still running your mouth, still saying that you can beat these guys. Why even retire? If you think that you're this big of a Billy Bad-A, why even retire? Why even say, oh, Joe, I'm this is my last fight. I wanted to no. Just shut up and fight, or shut up and retire. I firmly believe, going back to DC and Stipe, if Stipe beats DC, I firmly believe that Stipe will retire.
Right.
I think he will retire, and I think he will stay retired. I don't think there will be anything in the world that will bring him back to fight.
It'd be honestly nice to see. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you're right. If he does, you'd be a guy who went out on top and actually kept your word. It'd be nice to see.
So, you have guys like Michael Bisping who retired. You have guys like, I think it was Dan Hardy, who was, a commentator of this last one. He retired because I think it was a neck injury.
Right.
So, some of these guys that retire, they have legitimate reasons to retire. They have, underlying health issues that, this is going to, end my fight career. and that is totally acceptable. But if you are healthy and you are a champion and you're like Triple C and you go out and you say, this is my last fight, but yet you still sit around and you still run your mouth, shut up and either fight or retire. Stay retired and keep your nose out of fighting, or come back and fight. Don't say that you can beat all these people on Twitter and social media and be a keyboard warrior.
Right.
I relinquish my time to the senator from Virginia.
I'll give you the shit bell at this point. So either way, as I start mine is, again, there's no disagreement on our side, but I will start with this. Again, to use an NCAA wrestling concept, if a young man finishes his match and he starts taking his shoes off on the mat and there are tears pouring down his eyes and there are people in the stands that are standing, what are you witnessing?
A retirement.
You are witnessing a retirement, his last match. And there is something that is very honorable and revered when somebody leaves their shoes on the mat. What's happened in MMA is there are people who have said they're going to retire. And I'll give you one, Randy Couture, who was in light heavyweight that could not get it done against Chuck Liddell. Again, a legitimate trilogy. We find out Chuck is the better man. And then Randy says, these are the last time you're going to see these gloves inside of the cage. He lays them in the cage and he leaves. Now, granted, I don't want to get too mad at Randy Couture, but you never saw him again in light heavyweight. You did see him go back to heavyweight after he got home. And there is something, too, we are finding out that fighters are realizing they may need a break. They may need time away from the sport, but they need to stay away from the term retirement, because that makes us, the common man, look at you and go, retirement means that you've taken out your 401k, you've gotten your wristwatch that you got after 25 years of services, that you're going to stay home at some point, or you're going to contribute in some other way other than stepping back into the cage itself. Another guy who did that, who straight up lied, was Tito Ortiz. After he had his fight, he left his gloves in the cage, but then very quickly after that, he sure wants to be included in the match with Fedor Emelianenko, and then he ends up fighting in Golden Boy MMA, which again, Oscar De La Hoya, who has no idea what he's doing in MMA, puts on a trilogy that was never a trilogy in the first place, and it was one of the lowest paying pay-per-views in the history of the sport, and I do have to raise my hands in a little bit of triumph for that. Not for Chuck Liddell, but for Oscar De La Hoya and for Tito Ortiz, because you lied about your retirement, or you certainly used the wrong term here. So when it comes to retirement of the sport, I can understand you saying, we're going to take a break. I understand we're going to go back and try something else. Hey, you want to go to Hollywood and act? I don't mind. Chuck Liddell's been doing that. If you want to go and try the world of WWE, okay, Ronda Rousey, I've got no problem with you expanding your horizon a little bit. But when you say the word retire, it really makes us, the common man, look at you and go, I thought you said... And that's not a response you want to get, because the people who pay attention to MMA are hardworking people who come in after a hard day and turn on ESPN Plus and want to see two guys bang. I mean, so when you look at the term retirement, it can't be – I just believe that it comes down to, I can express your concerns. You're an athlete doing what most of us can't do, but can we stay away from using the term retirement? You tell me you want to take a break, I'm going to agree with you. You want to try another organization, fine. You want to coach, you want to open a gym and start managing it, then I can understand that. I'm going to take some different business endeavors. I think Rumble Johnson said that, and I'm not mad at him if he wants to come back, because he never said that I was done fighting. He just said, I've got some other business endeavors I want to explore at this point. I'll take you up on that. Your words matter, and the word retirement, neither one of us like the direction that retirement has gone in the world of mixed martial arts. And I give up my bell a little bit early, too. I say fair wins, and I set sail. So, that was fun. But before I give this last one, thank you for coming on, Russ, but we're going to bring up a little bit of something in history here. Just once again, there are people that are watching MMA and going, why do words matter in a cage fight? Let me help you out with a little bit of history. One of the greatest to ever do it in the world of boxing is one you all know. When you think of the greatest heavyweight champion of all time, one of the names that's usually tossed around is Muhammad Ali, who started off as Cassius Clay. This is a guy who in a time where trash talking was not used. Let's go prior to that because it shows that words matter. It shows that he had the brash tone prior to this. It's about him in 1960 when Muhammad Ali, known as Cassius Clay, wins his Olympic gold medal in Rome in 1960. He comes back in Louisville to a great reception from the boxing community, gets a very big welcome home. He and his friend decide to go to a biker's bar where he's not welcome. We are talking about the 60s here. This is not good. So the lady in front does say, hey, you're not going to be welcome here. You might want to leave. Not that I don't want you here. She tried to be cordial. It didn't work. So Ali sat down with his, a little bit of his brash attitude at the time. The owner comes out, a huge guy smelling the bacon grease, and says, we don't serve in blank S here. And, of course, Ali looks up at him and says, that's good. I don't eat them. And that ends up getting him thrown out of the bar, which on a sad note does end up to where he ends up throwing his Olympic gold medal into the Ohio River, because what's the point for wearing it? You can't embrace what he earned in the Olympics, which is sad, in the world that he is in now. So he had to change a lot of things with his words. He started changing up when he got into the boxing ring and started talking trash about Sonny Liston. So we share all that in the time that we're in for the words matter, is that people who started it out, why was he one of the greatest of all time? I believe because he said he was. He was one of the first. We've got to mention the words matter history here, but can you concur on that, Russ, just for a few minutes? This isn't timed, but when you think of how people really tell their story and the times that we're in now, how much would you concur with that about how words matter in this sport?
Words in this sport can make you a main eventer. They can make you a house name. Derek Lewis, my balls was hot.
That's right. Derek Lewis knew how to use his words.
Conor McGregor knows how to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best press conferences we've seen.
Yeah, fans weren't allowed to be at that press conference with Conor and Khabib. Why? The words matter.
Yeah. Donald Cerrone, great talker, because Donald Cerrone would always get to the point. He wasn't a big trash talker. He would just tell you, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to knock you out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Donald isn't knocking anybody out, but hey, that's neither here nor there. And you have instances like this past weekend. Fight fans may have heard that we had an issue with Dan Hardy, who was commentating, and Herb Dean, who was the referee of I think it was the main prelim. I can't remember his name right off the top of my head. That was a knockout.
Yeah.
Dan Hardy screams, "Stop the fight!"
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Herb Dean didn't stop the fight. He stopped it maybe 3 seconds later. I went back and looked at it.
Right. And, another thing that people have to mention, I don't mean to cut you off here, Russ, but when you have somebody that yells stop the fight in current day MMA, it's going to be heard because you're in an empty arena. Let's make sure.
Well, and so Herb Dean made a brief video on his YouTube, or I don't know if it was YouTube or Instagram or whatever. But Herb Dean was like, the only people in that arena that can stop a fight, besides myself, are the physician and that team's corner.
Yes.
And for Herb Dean being in the position that he's in, if he just hears someone yell, "Stop the fight," Herb Dean has no idea who yelled "Stop the fight."
Right.
Herb Dean doesn't know if it was the physician. Herb Dean doesn't know if it was the corner. Or Herb Dean doesn't know if it was the loudmouth commentator who wanted to be Superman. Mm-hmm. Was Dan Hardy wrong? I absolutely believe he was wrong for yelling "Stop the fight" like that. Knowing, one, you're in an empty arena, just like that. Just like you just said. You hear everything.
You heard Daniel Cormier coaching from the sideline, from cage side. You're going to hear this one yelled out too. I don't condone it. I don't justify it. I just go, I can understand the emotions of a fighter or somebody who might have sparred with somebody in the past. I get that part. But once again, that's not Dan Hardy's job.
No, right. And that's the thing. And that's where when you talk about words matter. that's something that do your job.
Yep.
Don't do someone else's job. Do your job. You're at ringside to commentate for a fight. You're not at ringside to be a referee for a fight.
Right.
Your job is to use your words to talk about the fight. And of course, they exchange words after the fight. And I think in this day and age, to where the society that we're in right now, it's hard for athletes in general to get this weird vibe, or not vibe, but get this weird reputation to where, we all see it on social media where you have people that, I'm never going to watch that sport again. Them guys out there disrespecting the anthem. No, they're, and it's people like that just make you want to punch your computer screen or your phone screen, because it's almost like they're not paying attention to words. It's like they're not paying attention to what people are saying in the world right now. Right now in 2020, we all know that 2020 has been the strangest, absolute craziest year, especially in my life.
Especially in our lives, yeah, absolutely. Down to, like you said, I don't mean to cut you off. It just means to, at the end of the day, Herb Dean has his job to do. They need to do their job. I can understand the intent behind it, and that's what we as a society really have to work on. The intent behind me sharing Muhammad Ali's story is this is a guy who did not only show what he did in the ring, but also this is a guy who started changing the sport with his words. And if you ever want to go back to where it started with the legacy of Muhammad Ali, because your words matter. And the words he used in that bar led to the words he used with his opponents prior to other times. He found something from that point on. Winning a gold medal, as precious as that is, wasn't enough for the time that he was in. We live in a time where we were going to go to Dallas on air, and you had the windows that were busted out of that building. Unfortunately, and I'm saying that because you and I don't have a problem with peaceful protesters. We do have a problem with rioters, and that's something that messed with their business. They had to shut down again, and it is very much a cringeworthy time. But when we mention that in history, in a time like this, to say that your words do matter.
Absolutely.
Well, Russ, unless we have any other loose ends to tie up, I think that might be a good start for the very first Russ and the Blockhead. I think down the road, when we have JG, we'll have the triple threat. Either way, we can't really rival Pardon the Interruption yet. We're not Errol and the bad guy, but we are Russ and the Blockhead. Thank you, Russ, and I hope that you had as good a time as I did, friend.
Absolutely, man. This was fun. I'm looking forward to doing this again.
Oh, man, we'll definitely try to do them either once a week or bi-weekly. I think it all just depends. But as often as we can, we'll put them out there. I wait constantly for things like that on ESPN. I want to hear the commentary. And again, it's not just like us. We beg for the commentary. And it's every other sport. It's not the same. You don't watch your sports on mute. Why? Because of what we just talked about. Words matter. And this show, we hope, will matter to all of you that are listening. Blockhead Nation, Loud and Opinionated Nation, Rated JG Nation, everybody else that comes in. This has been Russ and the Bad Guy, and we bid you adieu.
Adios.
Until next time.